9 bone-chilling true horror stories that haunt the Appalachian Mountains. Never whistle alone. In the depths of the Appalachian Mountains, whispers of dread hang thick like morning fog. Once you enter, shadows seem to clutch at your very being. The locals warn, never whistle while you wander. It's not just a superstition. It's a caution steeped in the chilling stories of those who have vanished, never to return. The trees themselves seem to sway with secrets, each creak of their branches a warning, as if the forest knows something dark that it refuses to share. As we plunge deeper, the tales multiply. One lost hiker stumbled upon a cabin, its windows boarded, but the glow of a flickering candle drew him in. Inside, he found not just emptiness, but the echoes of laughter, and portraits of people who appeared too old, too withered, yet painfully familiar. He fled in terror, but the woods were alive. They whispered his name, compelling him back. What did he see? And why do the trees sometimes seem to tremble when the wind blows, as if something unseen is slipping between the worlds? Tensions rise. An old woman, her eyes dark as coal, recounts how her son went missing near a river bend. He had simply followed a beautiful song, one that had lured him away from camp. The locals' shiver songs here are no common tunes. They're considered bait, an invitation to the unruly spirits that stagger between reality and dreams. Nothing could touch their hearts like the thought of his forlorn face, fueled by a melody that drew him into the abyss. Each word she speaks, thick with emotion, coils tight around the listeners' throats. Hey! Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The atmosphere thickens, as a chilling breeze sweeps over the gathering. Murmurs ripple through the crowd, fears igniting as tales of a spectral figure emerge. The whistling woman. They say her haunting call can be heard echoing through the mist, luring the curious into her embrace. Those who heed it vanish without a trace. What fate awaits anyone brave enough to confront the legend? As twilight descends, the line between legend and reality blurs. The forest waits, the mountains breathe heavy, and only one question remains. Who will be next to answer the call? The chill in the air prickled at the backs of necks as the crowd huddled closer, drawn together by fear. The whispers of the whistling woman twisted through the darkness like vines, wrapping around those present, tightening with each breath. A nervous laugh erupted from a young man at the edge of the group, trying to break the tension. Come on, it's just a story. But the laughter faded quickly, making way for a profound silence that swallowed his bravado whole. Then, from the shadows, an elderly man stepped forward, his figure a silhouette against the dimming light. He held their gaze, his voice gravelly and low, a voice steeped in years of hard living and untold horrors. You think it's just a story? Take heed. I saw her once, the whistling woman. I was just a boy, playing by the creek, when I heard a sound, a sweet, alluring tune, like nothing I'd ever known. The crowd leaned in, captivated, their hearts pounding. I followed it just like my mother warned me not to. It crept through the trees, wrapping around me, drawing me in. But when I reached the clearing, his voice quivered, the memory washing over him like a wave of dread. I saw her. She stood there, her hair like shadows, face hidden under a veil. And the song, oh, the song! It grabbed hold of my soul. What happened next? A woman whispered, her breath catching in her throat. I ran, he gasped, his eyes wide as if the very image haunted him. I ran faster than I ever had before. But something in that moment, I felt it pulling at my feet like it wanted me to stay. It wanted to claim me, and I barely escaped. Gasps echoed through the crowd. The gravity of his words weighed heavily. What was it that tormented this man, And was he merely a pawn in the game of something far darker than their mundane lives? Meanwhile, while everyone was wrapped in horror, one figure in the back quietly slipped away, unnoticed. She walked deeper into the woods, drawn by an unexplainable urge. The trees bowed over her like guardians, casting long shadows on her path. The night grew darker. The song began to echo, not just in her mind but rippling through the air. Came from somewhere not far, sweet and seductive. Twisting, curling, pulling her closer. A grin creased her lips. There was something exhilarating about it. Who could resist a song so perfect? Sometimes, a little mischief is all it takes. Meanwhile, back with the crowd, the old man's narrative lingered, shifting the atmosphere. The fear morphed into irritation. What if she's just a tale? Another young voice echoed the skepticism. People get lost all the time. They don't just vanish. Before anyone could respond, a sudden rustling erupted beyond the treeline. The air went stale. Tension coiled around every heart. Eyes darted toward the sound, humans instinctively readying themselves to flee. The primal urge igniting a firestorm of panic as the darkness thickened like fog, and every sound amplified in the silence. Another whisper, only louder this time, broke through all that unease, a calling voice, clear and beckoning, dancing on the wind. Come to me, who would heed the call? Who might be foolish or brave enough? As fear tangled with curiosity, the forest watched. What awaited in the night? Would one brave soul step forward, or would they all turn back? Those remnants of laughter twisted into gasps, echoing through the woods, chilling to the bone. But one question lingered in the silence that fell. What if the whistling woman was awakening? The moment hung thick in the air, each heartbeat palpable as eyes flitted about the gathering. The old man's words had carved a fissure of doubt into their minds, and the night felt alive, electric with unseen possibilities. Those who had laughed were suddenly silent, faces painted with uncertainty, as if each whisper of the wind carried a warning. Then, with sudden intensity, the rustle grew louder, more urgent, as if something was breaking through the thick brush, eager to join the gathering. An ethereal glow flickered between the trunks, dancing, beckoning. This isn't right, a voice shouted, breaking the tension. We need to go, now. But it was too late. The song twisted through the trees, wrapping itself around the crowd like a soft noose. The woman who had wandered away was lost in the alluring melody, her laughter blending with the haunting tune. She moved deeper into the woods, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and thrill. Where are you going? Someone shouted, desperate. But her feet knew no hesitation. The trees whispered to her, coaxing her forward. With each step, the air felt warmer, sweeter. Each pulse of the song vibrated in her chest. It was intoxicating. Back at the crowd, fear spiraled into chaos. People were readying themselves to flee, panic igniting a spark into a wildfire. We can't leave her, someone cried. Another took a step toward the darkness, propelled by concern. Shut up, don't. But even as he shouted, he too was being pulled nearer. The old man's tale echoed in their ears, each word poisoning their thoughts. What if she's already chosen? An anxious voice dared ask, but it was swallowed by the rising tide of fear. Tales of the whistling woman swirled in their minds like coiling smoke, ensnaring their courage. What was waiting in the depths? Would they, too, succumb to the call, just like the girl drifting into oblivion? In the shadows, a figure emerged from the trees, a gaunt silhouette with a haunting presence. The crowd froze, transfixed by the contrast of her pale face against the dark foliage. The woman's veil billowed lightly in the breeze, and her eyes glinted, too lively for a being who shouldn't belong in this world. Come to me, she sang, her voice dripping with desire. The words wrapped around their thoughts, tugging at their core. They could feel their hearts sinking, their wills wavering. No, we can't, someone shouted again, stepping back. But what could they do against that ethereal power? The lure of the song sunk deeper, planting roots in their minds. Murmurs began to rise, some feeling compelled to approach, others fighting against whatever spell was cast upon them. But the girl, still dancing toward the clearing, was already lost. The air flickered with energy as she moved to meet the whistling woman. Two figures now entangled in the glow that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. The crowd watched, horrified. Then, with a voice laced with danger, the whistling woman spoke again. "Join us where the lost find their way home." The promise hung in the air, heavy with temptation. There, on the edge of sanity, could anyone resist? Would they turn from the darkness? Or would some find themselves drawn into an unfathomable fate? As confusion gripped the crowd, it was clear something had shifted. And the young woman, unaware of the horror she was courting, laughed as she felt the warmth of the night envelop her. But little did she know, choice and consequence were about to collide in ways none could foresee. What would happen if the song found its mark? And what of those still standing at the edge? The whistling woman's intentions hung unspoken like a knife poised to drop. Would she reveal her true nature or leave them spiraling into shadows of their own fears? The night thickened, waiting for the answers. The eerie silence of the woods was suddenly split open by a blood-curdling scream. It sliced through the night air like a knife, snapping the crowd back to reality. Panic erupted as several people turned on their heels, desperation propelling them away from the clearing, away from the whistling woman, and away from the possibility of losing themselves completely. One man stumbled, feet tangling in the underbrush. Heart racing, he shouted, "We have to save her. We can't just leave her." But every word rang hollow, lost among the cacophony of their panic. Time stretched out like molasses. The grove felt like a predator, waiting and watching, its prey teetering on the brink. The remaining onlookers, torn between the primal urge to flee and the instinct to rescue, hesitated. Eyes darted from one another to the clearing, where the woman still danced unawares. Her laughter cut into their minds, a cruel reminder of the mirth that had once lived among them. "Don't you hear it?" A woman breathed, her voice trembling. It's so beautiful she was losing her grip on reality, swaying slightly, as if she too felt the pull of the enchanting melody. "Maybe we should go to her." "No," someone shouted, louder this time, his desperation raw. "It's a trap. You can't let it take you, too." With that, he stepped forward, trying to shake the woman from the spell that wrapped her like a shroud. But the whistling woman raised a slender hand, silencing them all. "Join me," she cooed. "Together we can be free of the burdens you carry. Paradise awaits beyond this realm. You are all so tired." Her words were honey, sweet and treacherous, gliding into their ears, wrapping around their fears. Then, like a dam bursting, a few surged forward, drawn by the promise of escape. They moved toward the figure in the shadows, their faces vacant and entranced. With each step, they seemed to shed their humanity, melting into the darkness as if it were a warm blanket inviting them home. This sight ignited a flicker of fear that overshadowed even the siren call of the song. "Stop! Come back!" A young man lunged after them, grasping at the shadows they left behind. But his fingers met only air, slipping into the void just as they were. The crowd coalesced around this new horror. Some pledged to fight against the malevolent force, yet others became ensnared, visions dancing through their minds of utopias bathed in light where nothing hurt and no one ever felt pain again. Each tantalizing thought held them back, their feet glued to the rich earth that felt almost alive. Then the girl's laughter rang out again, echoing through the trees, joyful and haunting all at once. It spurred a new wave of fear through the crowd. "We have to do something," someone screamed. "What if she can't come back?" It was too late. They had already seen too much how their friends slipped into the darkness, swallowed whole by the lure that clung to this night. "No!" a woman shrieked. "No more. I won't let this happen." With raw desperation igniting within her, she charged toward the clearing, her heart pounding in her chest. Would she be able to pull them back from the edge of sanity? Or would she, too, be lured into the darkness? Just as she reached the border of the trees, the song took on a new pitch, a desperate melody vibrating through her very soul. "You can't fight this," the whistling woman sang, her voice now layered with an edge of darkness. "Join me, join them." The young woman stopped, breath hitching in her throat. The choice was sliding through her fingers like sand, but she could feel the weight of her friends' futures pressing down on her. She had one moment, one heartbeat to decide. What would she choose? Would she plunge headfirst into the unknown? Or would she claw her way back, risking everything? In that fleeting second, as the darkness swirled around her, questions of loyalty, fear, and sacrifice waged war in her mind, and beyond, the laughter morphed, mixing with wails that grasped at the edges of hope. In a night that promised death and despair, uncertainty cast its chilling veil. The whistling woman stood, poised, waiting for the inevitable. As shadows fell deeper, the pulse of the song quickened, echoing the dread in every heart. Would anyone escape the pull of the whistling woman's dark embrace? The woods seemed to hum, holding its breath, awaiting the moment decisions would bloom into fate. What horrific reveals lay hidden in the song, just beyond comprehension? The world seemed to tilt, her heart pounding in her ears, drowning out the whistling woman's tempting melody. Time stood frozen as she weighed her options like stones in her hands. There was no telling what lay ahead if she crossed that threshold into the clearing. But one thing was clear. She couldn't leave her friends behind. With a wild breath, she charged forward. The shadows danced eagerly around her, like hungry wolves, their whispers urging her to turn back. She stumbled, her feet sinking into the rich earth. "Come back!" A voice cried from the crowd, desperation thick in the air. But her gaze was fixed on the woman, spinning gracefully, oblivious to the turmoil she stirred. She raced forward, every muscle tensed, her mind screaming against the seductive pull of the whistling woman. "I'm coming for you," she shouted, throwing caution to the wind, as her words sliced through the haunting laughter. In an instant, the clearing felt alive, the branches twisting as though arms reaching out to capture her. As she neared the edge, something crashed behind her. 3 people trampled into the brush, eyes wide with terror. They were fleeing, dragging panic in their wake. "Turn back," she shouted. "We have to go." But one of the figures, a man she barely recognized, clutched his head, caught between 2 worlds. "It's a trap. We're too far gone." His voice cracked, the pleading evident, and her heart cracked with it. Then, it hit her, a surge of clarity amidst the chaos. She needed to break the spell, to remind everyone of their reality. Channeling her fear into resolve, she raised her voice. "We are stronger together. We can fight it." With that, she broke into the clearing. Each step felt like wading through thick syrup. The whistling woman turned, her smile widening, a chasm of dark promise reflected in her unfathomable eyes. "Join us. Why fight it?" Her voice wrapped around them, silky and smooth, yet seething with malice. The crowd behind her hesitated, straddling the line between freedom and bondage. They looked haunted, their eyes glossed with a desperation that twisted her stomach. How many would succumb? How many would vanish into her grasp? "No," she shouted. "Listen to me." She could see their expressions shifting, fighting against the entrancing urge that threatened to pull them deeper. "Remember your joys. Remember why you came here." One by one, doubt flickered in the eyes of her friends. The man who had cried out stumbled back, cutting through the illusion. We were happy before this," he gasped. But the whistling woman's eyes darkened, her smile a predator's flash of teeth. "You think you can escape? You will never feel joy again if you choose this path." Her laughter morphed into a shriek, echoing violently into the night. The roar of the forest swelled, a chorus of thrumming panic. The trees felt alive, the ground quaked as if the very essence of the woods shifted to consume them. The girl raised her hands, begging for them to listen. "Fight, fight it. Dig deep. We can break free." Behind her, movement surged through the crowd like a jolt of electricity. One by one, people began stepping back, their faces clearing. The pull of the woman had weakened, but the struggle was far from over. "What are you doing?" the whistling woman hissed, furrowing her brows. Then, she lunged forward, a streak of darkness, a formidable force aiming to reclaim her subjects. The girl thrust herself forward, desperate to shield her friends. But the very air thickened as shadows surged, closing in around them that it felt like the very ground wanted to swallow them whole. A chill crept down her spine. This wasn't a simple fight, it was a battle for their souls. Hold on, she cried out. Fight back. Together. Just as they began moving back into the safety of the trees, a gut-wrenching wail erupted from the depths of the clearing. Those who had disappeared began emerging, their eyes vacant, lost. The woods quivered with a coldness that signaled their horror was far from over. Run! She screamed again, her voice slicing through the tension, yet uncertainty clawed at her gut. Would they all make it out alive, or was this only the beginning of an even darker nightmare? As they surged deeper into the woods, the haunting song transformed into a dissonant melody, a malevolent laughter trailing behind them. Shadows loomed larger, filling the night with dread. How many would escape the darkness before it consumed them all? As branches rasped against their skin, a surge of fear took hold. The night was far from over, and what awaited them in the heart of the woods would prove to be twisted beyond anything they had anticipated. The frantic sound of their feet pounding against the forest floor echoed in her ears as they fled deeper into the trees. Wild, primal fear clung to the air, wrapping its claws around them, every breath a struggle against panic. She could feel her friends pushing behind her, their presence acting as a fragile shield against the darkness that threatened to swallow them whole. With each step, the reality of what they had just encountered crashed in, heavy and suffocating. She glanced back briefly, and her heart raced as she caught a glimpse of the whistling woman, a nightmarish silhouette, chasing them with an otherworldly speed. Shadows wound around her like serpents, flickering in the soft light of the crescent moon. What was that thing? One of her friends gasped, his voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. I don't know, she shot back, her voice sharper than intended. But we can't stop. We have to keep moving. They navigated through the underbrush, the brambles clawing at their clothes, as if the forest itself conspired against them. The whispers of the shadows were louder now, twisting through the trees, a cacophony of lost hopes and dark promises. Suddenly, a piercing scream echoed from behind them, and her heart dropped. A girl from their group, too far back in the chaos, had stumbled. The last traces of her laughter lingered in the air as the woods seemed to swallow her whole. Gritting her teeth, the girl propelled herself forward. We can't leave anyone behind. What can we do? Another yelled, desperation tainting his voice. We're losing everyone. Rushing into the gloom, a sense of cruel urgency gripped her. We'll form a circle. Everyone, stay close. As they gathered, she could see pain etched in their faces, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. They were shattered but defiant, united in their fear. Remember why we came. Fight this together. Like a spark hitting dry wood, an ember of hope flickered within them. They locked hands, forming a chain, and with that connection, the weight of despair lightened just a fraction. The shadows flickered, and for a moment, the ghastly melody diminished. But it was fleeting. The whistling woman's menacing laughter roared in the darkness, rising above the whispers. You think you can resist? You belong to me, forever. Her voice coiled around the trees, invading their minds, riddling their peace with doubts. Could they truly fight against her? They could feel her presence pressing in on them, malicious and hungry. The darkness thickened, pulsing with a life of its own, as if it could sense their fear. Stay strong, she shouted, forcing her voice out over the encroaching dread. Just then, a chilling realization hit her. What if we stand our ground? What if we face her together? A murmur passed through the group. Are you sure? What if she strikes us down? Then we strike first, she declared, adrenaline igniting fire in her veins. We stand. We fight. As their resolve solidified, the forest erupted with an angry screech, the shadows shifting violently around them. The girl squeezed her friend's hands tighter, feeling their warmth against the encroaching chill. On three we shout. Together, she urged, a new determination sparking within her. 1, 2, 3. Their voices erupted into the night, a fierce and defiant roar slicing through the suffocating darkness. We won't let you take us. In that moment, the shadows recoiled, as if her words had physical weight, the air around them vibrating in response. But was it enough? The clearing behind them lit up, a shaky brilliance breaking through the night, revealing twisted forms of once-lost friends' faces now cold and empty. The girl's heart sank. Their eyes stared into nothingness, haunted and vacant. A chill ran through her, deeper than before. What would happen if they didn't win this fight? How many more must be lost? As they stood, united yet quaking, the whistling woman's laughter melded with the cries of the lost, swirling around them like a tempest. The battle had just begun, a test of spirit and will against an ancient entity, hungering for souls. And in the eye of the storm, she realized something far more chilling, like grappling with the darkness itself. They needed more than just hope, they needed to confront the nightmares hidden within themselves. Would they break the spell? Or would the whistling woman's final chorus be a requiem for the living? The air around them thickened as if the forest was digesting their fears. Each heartbeat felt louder, an echo of desperation that threatened to drown out the soul-chilling whispers around them. "Keep your eyes open," she commanded, her voice trembling but insistent. The darkness seemed to whisper back, teasing her resolve. The ghostly forms of their lost friends swirled in her mind, and she forced herself to look ahead. They couldn't fall apart now. The whistling woman's laughter sliced through the air again, sending sharp chills racing down her spine. It wrapped around them like a twisted vine, choking the hope they had managed to muster. "You're trapped in my woods," she crooned, her voice a sickly sweet melody laced with malice. Just like them, gritting her teeth, she pushed against the tide of dread pulling at her. "We need to move," she urged, nudging the group as they fought to overcome the encroaching darkness. "We can't stay here. If we're gonna face her, let us do it somewhere with light." One of her friends, a boy with fiery determination burning in his eyes, nodded. "Let us head towards the ridge. There's a cabin up there." "The cabin," another echoed, a spark igniting within them, fear shifting to purpose. They started moving, forging ahead despite the growing shadows. But as they wound through the trees, the screeching laughter followed them, now mingling with the echoes of the friends they thought they had lost. It felt like a living thing, clawing at their sanity. "Do you hear them? They will join me." The trees swayed, branches crashing together in a mocking rhythm, heightening the fear that filled every breath. They stumbled forward, hearts racing, hands slipping as doubt clawed at them. "Let go of the past," she shouted, trying to quell the unease swelling among them. "Focus on each other. Focus on surviving." The words tumbled from her mouth, a desperate attempt to anchor them against the swelling tide of despair. Then, without warning, the ground beneath them vibrated. An earthy crackling rang out, breaking their resolve. She stumbled, her foot catching on an unseen root, and she grasped for balance, but it was too late. Down she fell, and with her the chain broke. Panic surged as the world blurred around her, and she felt the ground biting into her, sharp rocks digging into her skin. "Wait," voices called out, but they faded as the shadows began to churn. The whistling woman danced in the darkness, her figure looming large, an unearthly figure suffused with sheer evil. In that moment, the girl found herself alone, breath catching in her throat. She looked up, horror swelling inside her, realizing the depths of her isolation. "No!" She scrambled up, but it was as if the ground pushed back against her like a cold, living thing. She could hear the frantic cries of her friends as they turned back for her, but with every grasp they reached for, the darkness constricted around them. A howl pierced her thoughts, and she sensed it before she saw it, a shadow lunging forward, long fingers outstretched. She braced herself, confusion mingling with determination. What was she meant to confront within herself? And how could fear become her strength? Peering into the depths, she realized it wasn't just the whistling woman they had to fight. It was their own despair, the guilt of leaving friends behind, of giving in to fear. She had to be the light. They all did. Taking a breath, she shouted with all her might, "Stand firm. We're in this together." The air trembled again, and she saw their silhouettes, fighting through the dark, hearts tied to one another like a living thread. But would it be enough? As shadows reached out, touching her, her resolve deepened. The battle against the whistling woman raged on, but it was just the beginning. They were not merely fighting for their lives, but for their very souls, and within that moment, a chilling truth crystallized. What if the only way to defeat her was to embrace the darkness she feared? Would they stand together, or would the whispers draw them into eternal night? She felt the air shift as the shadows thickened around her, pressing down like a weight. Together, she shouted again, trying to reach through the thickening veil of darkness. The whispers curled around her words, mocking them. The ground trembled as if resentful at her defiance. From the corner of her eye, she saw movement, a flash of white darting between the trees. She turned, heart racing. It was a figure, flickering in and out of the shadows, darting away repeatedly. Could it be a ghost? One of their lost friends? It beckoned her with a frenzied energy that ignited a dangerous hope within her. After it, she yelled, willing her friends to follow. But when she turned, their forms were entangled in shadow, disappearing into the swirling dark. No, come on, we can't lose each other. Yet, their voices faded, swallowed by the sound of anguished laughter. The whistling woman was toying with them. This was her game, and with each passing moment, it felt like stakes rose higher. She sprinted towards the fleeting figure, desperation pushing her onward. The shimmering light seemed to pulsate, exploring new paths through the woods, urging her along. As she ran, branches lashed out, scratching at her arms, snagging her clothes. Each tug felt like the forest itself was trying to hold her back, to reject her intrusion. The laughter echoed once more, louder this time, resonating against the trees until it became a monstrous cacophony. Join us, the voice danced in the air, dripping with an allure that clawed at her sanity. She shook her head vigorously. No, no, she couldn't fall for it. The figure slipped behind a tree, and she raced after it, heart pounding. She reached the trunk and pressed her palms against its rough bark, peering around. But it was gone, leaving her alone in a sea of shifting shadows. Simon, I'm not afraid of you, she cried into the darkness, trying to sound more confident than she felt. What if she could provoke the whistling woman? What if facing her fear head-on was the very key to survival? Suddenly, the laughter fell still, and in its place came a silence so profound it screamed. It felt like the woods inhaled deeply as if preparing for something monumental. Brave little mouse, the whistling woman cooed, materializing from the depths of the shadows before her. The air froze, and fear clawed at her throat. The apparition was even more grotesque, up close, her eyes wide and hollow, a twisted smile painted with despair. What makes you think you can escape? Taking a cautious step back, she stifled a shiver. I'm not afraid of, but before she could finish, a gust of wind surged from nowhere, sending her stumbling to the ground. The woman extended her hands, fingers stretching impossibly long, curling through the air. They radiated shadows, oozing malevolence. You think fear is all I am? You think you can just face me? The question hung in the air, a challenge, daring her to answer. She could sense the truth creeping in. The depths of her fear were wide but filled with that universal connection, the knowledge that they were all afraid, that fear itself united them. She couldn't deny it any longer. What if fear isn't the end? She whispered, the realization sparking in her chest like a flickering candle. What if it's the beginning? The whistling woman laughed, a sound that felt like ice shattering. Then you are even more foolish than I thought. With a sudden rage, she stood tall, defiance radiating from her core. I am not alone, she shouted, sending ripples of energy through the air. In that moment the darkness morphed, flickering. For the first time, she felt a shift as her friends' silhouettes began to materialize on the edges of the forest, struggling but pushing their way through. Together we are strong. But as unity unfolded, the shadows lunged forward, thrashing violently, howling in fury. She turned back to the whistling woman, ready to stand her ground. This isn't just about me anymore. The tension crackled. She had awakened something powerful. Would the bonds they forged be enough to withstand the forces of darkness? The battle was about to escalate, and she felt the air thick with anticipation, knowing this was just the beginning. What would happen when the true confrontation began? Would hope be enough to break free from the grasp of despair? The darkness roared around them, but the flickering silhouettes of her friends began to merge with her own resolve. Fear still clutched at her heart, but it was intertwined with something else, a flicker of courage, a spark of hope that ignited when they stood together. Suddenly, the laughter of the whistling woman swelled around them like a hurricane, whipping through the branches and filling the air with chaos. Unity? How quaint! She shrieked. You think that can save you? The shadows writhed, morphing into twisted shapes that lunged at her friends. She could see the panic in their eyes as they fought to break free from the grasp of the dark tendrils wrapping around their limbs. Hold on. Don't let go, she urged, her voice barely a whisper against the cacophony. They struggled, pulling against the exhausting weight of shadows that threatened to devour them. One by one, she saw them falter, a friend's terrified gaze caught in a moment of despair, another's breath choked by fear. Desperation surged inside her. She couldn't lose them. Together. Fight it, she shouted, channeling every ounce of strength she could muster. We're stronger together. In response, the shadows thickened, trying to drown out her words, swallowing the sound. But even in their depths, she felt a pulse, a heartbeat of unity that connected each of them, pulling them closer. It was the source of their strength, a tether in the spiraling darkness. Suddenly, the whistling woman broke free from her throne of shadows, moving with a speed that blurred her edges. You are weak, she screeched, twisting her head to face them, a macabre grin stretching wider. Let me show you your true selves. With a flick of her wrist, a wave of terror rushed forward, crashing over each of them like frigid water, seeping into their minds, dredging up raw fears they thought long buried. Relentless images flashed before her. The loss of loved ones, the suffocating grip of loneliness, the darkness of regret. It became harder to breathe. The tentacles of dread clawed into her mind, but she fought back against the flood. No, she screamed, memories swirling but refusing to take root. We are more than our fears. She felt an echo ripple through her friends. The flicker of recognition spread between them. One by one, they began to channel the memories not as burdens, but as the fire that fueled their fight. It ignited a bond formed by shared history, collective struggles, and unwavering support. As if sensing the shift, the whistling woman howled, a shriek that rattled the very trees. Your resolve means nothing. I will tear you apart. With every strand of darkness she sent their way, each one served as a reminder. Every worry, every pain, it felt heavy but also liberating to acknowledge it, to face it together. Their unity began to weave a shield around them, a protective barrier formed from the raw power of their connection. She held them tighter, forcing the connection to shine brighter. Together, in that moment, the shadows recoiled, pulled back by the strength of their collective resolve. The whistling woman stumbled, her grotesque features twisting in rage. You dare defy me? As the shadows faltered, the path illuminated faintly through the chaos, revealing a semblance of hope. The flickering figure from earlier appeared again, steady and clear, like a lighthouse guiding them through the storm. Follow it. The ground quaked beneath them as they charged toward the figure, hearts racing, adrenaline pumping. But as they neared, the air crackled, and with it came a chilling realization, a truth they hadn't yet understood. What awaited them beyond the flickering light? A path to freedom or further traps set by the shadows. Would this haunting quest lead them home, or deeper into the whistling woman's game? With one united step into the unknown, they felt the pulse of destiny shift, but the shadows were far from finished. Would they be able to reclaim their fate, or would the whistling woman succeed in ensnaring them all? The woods trembled, and the air crackled with tension as the group pressed forward, united in their newfound resolve. The whistling woman's furious howl echoed behind them, but they dared not look back. Fear surged raw and primal, but with each step, an ember of hope ignited in their hearts, fueling their determination. "Keep moving," the girl shouted, leading them toward the flickering figure that pulsed ahead. "We can make it." The shadows flared, whirling around them like a tempest. Distorted faces lunged from the darkness, whispering painful memories that clawed at their souls. But this time, with every haunting echo, their bonds tightened. They were not alone anymore. They bore each other as fears, their strength defying the clutches of despair. "The light," one friend yelled, pointing at the glowing apparition weaving between the trees like a guiding star. A promise of hope that in a rush, they moved toward it, each footstep a reclaiming of their power. The darkness roared in defiance, shadows snapping like whips, trying to tear them apart. But with every pulse of unity, the light grew brighter, illuminating the path ahead. Together, the girl shouted again, "We won T, let her take us." As they united their voices, the shadows recoiled, sizzling against the light as if scorched. The whistling woman's form twisted in rage, her shriek echoing through the grove, desperation clawing at the edges of her voice. "You think this will save you? You're still mine." A fierce wind howled as tendrils of darkness lunged forward, but the radiant glow of the flickering figure surged, magnifying their connection. It became a shield around them, flickering like flame against the encroaching shadows. Those shrill voices of despair morphed into a cacophony of strength, urging them forward as they broke through the last thick branches of the woods. The clearing opened up beneath the starry sky, revealing a forgotten cabin, old and weathered, yet radiating warmth, a sanctuary against the monstrous shadows. "Inside," she urged, and they rushed toward the door, slamming it shut behind them. Heartbeats reverberated in the silence, a moment of tense stillness as they collectively drew breath. But relief was only temporary. The oppressive weight of the darkness pulsed against the wooden walls as the whistling woman's fury echoed from outside. "You cannot hide from me." Her voice scraped against their minds, a haunting reminder of the relentless fear they had faced. They huddled in the cabin, breathing heavily, exchanging glances that carried a mixture of trepidation and fierce determination. "We faced her together. We can do this," she reassured softly, her voice firm like a thread binding them all. One by one, they shared their fears, their battles against isolation, guilt, and regret. The darkness outside swirled, a growling tornado of despair. But as each one spoke, they felt their burdens lift, sharing the weight that had threatened to consume them. "She needs us to be afraid," one friend said. "If we fight this together, we can beat her." Another finished. The flickering light intensified, illuminating the dusty cabin walls. Each confession turned into sparks. Each moment of vulnerability became an act of resistance. They could feel their connection pulsing, resonating stronger with every whispered encouragement. Together, they echoed, the word a rallying cry against the shadows. Just then, the door rattled violently as shadowy tendrils began to seep through, their grasping fingers probing the air. But instead of recoiling in fear, they stood shoulder to shoulder, mirrors of strength and resolve. "Face her," the girl yelled, stepping forward, a fierce sparkle igniting in her eyes. "Remember why we fight." And with a unified shout, they reached deep within themselves, summoning every ounce of courage. "We won T, be afraid." The shadows recoiled violently back, the flickering light igniting like wildfire, overwhelming the encroaching darkness, forcing it to recede with a deafening screech from outside. The whistling woman's cries transformed into distant echoes, diminishing as the glow engulfed them. But the moment of victory was fleeting. The whistling woman's figure shifted into the shadows, and they could sense her lingering presence, testing their resolve. "You'll never be free from fear," her voice taunted, floating like smoke beneath the cabin's door. "Fear isn't our enemy. It's our strength," the girl declared, eyes blazing. "We own it, and we're not afraid anymore." The shared warmth ignited their newfound power. They pressed forward, feeling the cabin tremble under the weight of their battle. And then, channeling their collective energy, they launched their voices forward louder, stronger, resonating against the very essence of the woods, breaking through the shell of silence. "No more," they shouted in unison, shaking the very roots of despair. We are not lost. The air crackled, electric, as the shadows convulsed against the light, whipped back like a storm retreating under dawn's first light. Their voices echoed through the mountains, intertwining with the very essence of the woods, unshackling their souls from the bonds of fear. And in that explosive moment, the cabin erupted in brilliant light, the shadows surging backward as the whistling woman's piercing scream became nothing more than a fading wail lost among the trees. Outside, the woods breathed deeply, releasing the tight grip of terror that had held them captive for far too long. The forest seemed to glow brighter, flickers of hope echoing through the once ominous trees. They stood tall, hand in hand, in the peaceful light, feeling the gentle breeze wrap around them like a protective embrace. The weight lifted, a collective sigh releasing as the remnants of fear faded into whispers of resilience and unity. As they looked at one another, they knew the darkness would always lurk in the corners, but together, they had found their strength. The song of the whistling woman would never again draw them in. Their futures held a promise of light, born from confronting their fears. Their haunting tale ended, not with loss, but with a renewed sense of hope mingled with interconnected souls, a bond forged in the shadows of the Appalachian Mountains, forever alive, forever unbroken. And as they stepped out into the starlit night, the last remnants of the forest's chilling grip faded, replaced by the vibrant melody of newfound freedom, a victory over the haunting echoes that once bound them. If you've loved this story, this is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive tales that will keep you at the edge of your seat. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep our community thriving. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this thrilling conclusion. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Let us keep the conversation going. Together, we can create something extraordinary.